Everybody in the SEC now has an SEC loss. So what does that mean? We'll get you our winners and losers from SEC Week 10. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome to Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. On today's show, we'll get you our winners and losers of the week and also some other SEC tidbits as well. And the school gets fined for rushing the field. Goodness gracious. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And a reminder, you can start this season with a big return over at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, let's dive right into it as we got to get to our winners and losers of the weekend. And first off, start off with our winners of the weekend. And we got to start with LaNorris Sellers and Rocket Sanders over at South Carolina. We said all last week, a night game at Williams-Brice is just more live. And boy, was it ever on Saturday night as the South Carolina Gamecocks knocked off top 10 ranked Texas A&M 44-20. Outscoring the Aggies 24-0 in the second half. A big night from several South Carolina stars, including quarterback LaNorris Sellers, who threw for 244 yards, 2 touchdown passes, also rushed for 106 yards and a rushing touchdown. Then in the backfield, it was Rocket Sanders doing everything he could. 20 carries, 144 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns for him. He also had 5 catches for 92 receiving yards. Those 2 guys were absolute studs. Then you add in Josh Simon, who had 132 yards receiving with both of those receiving touchdowns. It was a monster night for offensive coordinator Dowell Loggins, who, man, facing a tough Aggie defense. That was a great work by everybody involved for South Carolina. But credit LaNorris Sellers, man. He was hit a ton, and he just wouldn't go down. Time and time again, an Aggie defender would get his hands on Sellers, but just couldn't bring him down. Sellers would avoid a sack. He would turn it into a positive play. And crazy to think, he's still a redshirt freshman. Was only playing in his 4th full game in college. Future is bright for LaNorris Sellers. Over 500 total yards of offense for South Carolina on the night. A monster night for folks in Columbia with Sandstorm pumping from the speakers, all the garnet lights flashing all night. And credit the Gamecock defense, too. 3 sacks on the evening. Dylan Stewart, TJ Sanders, Tonka Hemingway. O'Donnell Fortune had a big interception of Marcel Reed early in the 4th quarter. And shout out Shane Beamer, earned his first ranked win since beating Clemson to finish the 2022 regular season. But this one reminded me a lot of the game the week prior that year when they beat top 10 ranked Tennessee at night in Columbia. But with Texas A&M's loss, there are now 0 SEC teams left undefeated in SEC play. You kind of expected that the way this year was developing, that everybody was going to have a loss. And now it becomes Game of Thrones, right? Like everybody's grasping for the top and who's the best 1-loss team? Who's the best 2-loss team? You know, how many 10-2 teams are we going to finish with at the end? Will there be a logjam? A lot to get into as we get down the stretch of this season. More winners of SEC Week 10. And we go over to Oxford as quarterback Jaxson Dart coming off a lackluster win over Oklahoma at home last week. A lot of folks expected Arkansas to give Ole Miss a game in Fayetteville on Saturday. But Jaxson Dart, well, he had other plans. Dart set Ole Miss records for yards passing and touchdown throws in a single game, leapfrogging Matt Corral and Eli Manning as the 19th-ranked Rebels dominated 63-31 in a win over Arkansas. Jaxson Dart threw 4 scores and over 300 yards in just the first half. And then he finished 25 of 31 for 515 yards and 6 touchdowns. Dart said after the game, "It's pretty cool and unique to have this opportunity. I thought Coach Charlie Weiss called a hell of a game today, put us in great position." And Jaxson Dart now leads the country in passing yards with 3,210 yards through the air. He's surpassed Heisman contender Cam Ward over at Miami. And Dart's 21 touchdown passes are third best in the nation. He has a quarterback rating of 192. That leads the nation as well. Wide receiver Jordan Watkins, he was Dart's go-to target on the day. He set school records with 5 touchdown catches and 254 yards receiving. Keep in mind, they did this without Trey Harris, their star wide receiver. He missed his second straight game after suffering that leg injury against LSU. Lane Kiffin said after the game, look, you're playing without your best receiver in the country. So to design the plays, a lot of different type of plays, guys wide open, really good rhythm. It's a good day. Ole Miss did see running back Henry Parrish limping heavily and favoring his left leg on Sunday. Kiffin was asked about Parrish's status. He said, quote, yeah, he's out. That's all I got. So Parrish, Ole Miss's leading rusher on the season, 4th most rush yards in the SEC this year. They're going to have to lean on guys behind him. Matt Jones, Dominique Thomas got some run on Saturday, and Ulysses Bentley, who, I don't know, has he been in the doghouse, whatever the issue is there. They're going to have to lean on those other guys if Parrish is going to miss some time. It was the 7th win of the season for Ole Miss, so that ensured that Lane Kiffin would receive an automatic 1-year contract extension worth $9 million, with $7.2 million of that being guaranteed. He's got a heck of a contract there at Ole Miss. Ole Miss, they will get number 2 Georgia this coming week. Should find themselves putting everything they got into this game because a college football playoff berth very much still in play for Ole Miss. But congrats to Jaxson Dart, a heck of a week from him. Another winner of the week, how about Kirby Smart over at Georgia? Look, weird stuff happens in rivalry games, and that's exactly what we got in this year's Florida versus Georgia game in Jacksonville. Georgia found themselves trailing Florida 13-6 at halftime before the Bulldogs finally woke up on offense and defense in the second half, outscored the Gators 28-7 to win this one 34-20. And Georgia is now 7-1 overall, 5-1 in the SEC. They won their 4th straight in this series. That's the longest streak since winning 6 in a row back in the early 80s. And the last time Georgia football lost a game to a team not named Alabama, it was to Florida back in 2020. The weird thing was Florida stud freshman quarterback DJ Lagway. He left the game on a cart in the second quarter, and they had to turn to walk-on quarterback Aiden Warner. And that obviously helped Georgia's cause, going up against a third-string running quarterback, basically. But costly turnovers for Georgia by Carson Beck has some people wondering if this is a Georgia team that can still run the table and win a national championship. But nonetheless, the Bulldogs got a win in a rivalry game, and now we'll travel to Ole Miss this Saturday for a big one. Georgia will need to win this one, and then they will host a top 10 ranked Tennessee team the following week. If they can win these two, they finish the year at home against UMass and then at home against 5-4 Georgia Tech. If they can win all 4 of these, they will certainly get an invite to Atlanta, go play for an SEC title game, and then it is on to the playoffs. All right, another winner of the weekend over Tennessee, a bit of an ugly game in Knoxville on Saturday night. The Vols were able to get their offense going in the second half, and their run game got going with Dylan Sampson, and that is our winner of the week over Tennessee. Dylan Sampson finishing the night with 27 carries, 142 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns as Tennessee took down Kentucky 28-18. Dylan Sampson scored his 19th touchdown of the season. That's a school record, and now he has 980 rushing yards on the year. That leads the SEC. He's ahead of Jarquez Hunter, who is second with 913 on the ground. And the Volunteers have held their first 8 opponents defensively to under 20 points in each game. Kentucky's 18 this past week was the most they have allowed yet to an opponent this season. Josh Heupel's defense, the only unit in the FBS to have accomplished that feat this year. But they joined an exclusive club in the SEC as well. The only 4 SEC defenses since 2000 to hold their first 8 opponents to under 20 points in each game, and then went on to do it the rest of the way. LSU in 2003, Alabama in 2011 and 2012, and Georgia in 2021. All 4 of those teams went on to win national championships. Josh Heupel, talking about his team after the game, said he keeps reminding his players to stay in the moment, not look ahead to this showdown against Georgia on November 16th. They got to take care of business next week against Mississippi State. No margin of error for the Vols. Another winner of the weekend, how can we not show love to Clark Lee over at Vanderbilt? Man, what else can you say about the job Clark Lee has done this year at Vandy? Yet again, Vegas had them as an underdog this past weekend, and yet again, the Vanderbilt Commodores answered, pulling off a road win at Auburn, 17-7, and Vandy improves to 6-3 overall, 3-2 in the SEC. Vanderbilt is bowl eligible for the first time since 2018 and marked the program's first win at Auburn ever. Clark Lee saying after the game, "This is a great moment for our program, one we need to celebrate the right way. If you look at where we've come in, I feel like in December we probably hit rock bottom coming out of last season. Vandy, of course, they were winless in 8 SEC games last season, ending on a 10-game skid. But Diego Pavia threw for 2 touchdown passes after the game, kind of called out Auburn for not getting him in the transfer portal. He said, a lot of people didn't take a chance on me. They're just another team that didn't, so I just wanted to make them pay for what they did." Vandy offensive lineman Stephen Hubbard after the game riled up a couple of Auburn players on the field, talking about Pavia improving to 3-0 against Hugh Freeze. And Vandy found a way to win. They got outgained 327 yards to 227 on the day. But it's the first time Vanderbilt has beaten Alabama and Auburn in the same season since 1955. And next up for Vandy, they host South Carolina this weekend. That should be a big one. And then Vandy has to go at LSU and home for Tennessee. So it might be a good thing they got this one against Auburn, because these last 3 games are going to be very tough, despite the great season Vanderbilt has had. But look, keep counting out Vandy, and maybe they'll just keep winning. All right, a couple other quick mentions in our winners of the weekend. How about Brent Venables over at Oklahoma? I'm sure none of you watched OU's 59-14 win over Maine, but Brent Venables' team improved to 5-4 on the season. So that means one more win will get OU to a bowl game. And knowing their last 2 games are versus Alabama and LSU, this may be their best chance this weekend at Mizzou. But at least for the Sooners, their 3-game losing streak came to an end, and they got a chance to catch their breath. Running back Javonte Barnes ran for a career-high 203 yards and 3 touchdowns. And OU gained a season-high 665 yards. Quarterback Jaxson Arnold threw for 2 touchdowns. Let's see if this does something for their confidence moving forward. And another winner of the weekend I threw in here, Michael Van Buren over at Mississippi State. I'm sure not many of you watched this when they beat UMass on Saturday, 45-20, but the Bulldogs actually trailed 10-0 after the first quarter. And I was like, Jeff Lebby, what are you doing? But the freshman quarterback, Michael Van Buren, settled in, threw for 222 yards and a touchdown, also had 2 rushing touchdowns as well. And Mississippi State picked up just their 2nd win of the season we're in November. They improved to 2-7 overall. It's been a brutal year for Mississippi State. Jeff Lebby said after the game, for those guys, being able to feel victory is important. So proud of that. But I'm excited about the future of Michael Van Buren at Mississippi State. It was the first win for him as the quarterback since he took over for Blake Shapen when he went down with that season-ending injury. But how about this for a stat? Michael Van Buren actually has now more touchdown passes than Brady Cook, Brock Vandegrift, and LaNorris Sellers, and he's tied with Nico Iamaleava in touchdown passes in the SEC. So pretty crazy there. Stone Blanton had a big night, 14 tackles for Mississippi State, the former South Carolina transfer. And the victory over UMass ended Mississippi State's 7-game losing streak. They will travel to Tennessee next up on November 9th. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. We gave you our winners of the week. Coming up next, we'll give you our losers of the week. That's coming your way here in just a second. First, I want to remind you guys, today's episode is presented to my friends at 5 Hour Energy. And our friends at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like us, the fans who are first in the parking lot and last to leave. We see you. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate, ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why this limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help you keep you fueled up throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available at 5hourenergy.com. Shipped nationwide. That is 5 Hour Energy, the number 5 hourenergy.com. Going along here, Locked On SEC. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day. All right, we did our winners of the weekend. Now let's get to our losers of the weekend. And we head over to Texas A&M as old Mike Elko. It was not pretty for Texas A&M just a week after knocking off LSU in College Station and climbing into the top 10 rankings. Texas A&M faced their first true hostile road test of the season, falling at South Carolina on Saturday night, 44-20. And the switch to quarterback Marcel Reed looked to be a good one. They trailed 14-0 early, but the Aggies came back to take the lead with just a minute or so to go before halftime. But the Gamecocks were able to get in a field goal range and tie it 20-20 at the half. But in the second half, Gamecock defense just too much, and A&M's offense just had no answer over and over again. The Texas A&M defense, they appeared to have LaNorris Sellers sacked or Sanders stopped for a short gain, but to no avail. And Mike Elko said his team needs to realize it takes good form to take down big guys. He said, look, obviously I did a poor job getting our defense to understand how you tackle a 240-pound kid. We kept trying to tackle high. It's not how you do it. But their run game took a little bit of a hit. They lost their leading rusher, Le'Veon Moss, early in the game with a knee injury. After the game, Mike Elko saying it wasn't as bad as it looked. So maybe Le'Veon Moss, at least seemingly how they're presenting it, not done for the year, should be back at some point. How much time will he be out? We will see. But Amari Daniels, a nice 1-2 punch with Le'Veon Moss. He had a nice highlight reel, 56-yard touchdown run. But the Aggies rushed for just 3.5 yards a carry on the night. Marcel Reed, he threw for 206 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Elko said we had 4 turnovers. We couldn't run the football. We couldn't tackle. We couldn't control the quarterback. We didn't do any of the things you need to do to win a football game, and so we lost. A&M had 0 sacks on the night, and their loss is a blow to their SEC title hopes, but still alive. If you look at the SEC standings, it is Georgia at the top at 5-1, A&M right there at 5-1 as well. Then you have Tennessee at 4-1, and then LSU and Texas both at 3-1. So all these teams still alive, and of course, with A&M, they are at Auburn in a few weeks, which they should be able to win that one. And they have never made it to Atlanta to play in the SEC championship in 13 years in the conference. Can they finally get there this year? We will see. So Aggies, season's not over, but certainly takes a blow. And I was trying to tell A&M fans this, and I've been trying to tell Texas fans this, like, this is playing the SEC. Like, you have to be tested. And if you haven't been tested and you're peacocking around, you're beating your chest, look, A&M's schedule set up well. They opened with Notre Dame at home. They lost that one. But then after that, it was McNeese. Then it was a road trip to Florida where, they were going through it. Then it was home for Bowling Green. Then it was the annual game in Dallas against Arkansas that they always seemingly win, and that was a close one. Came down to the wire. Then they beat the hell out of Mizzou at home, but it was at home. They won at Mississippi State, who's the worst team in the conference. And then they came back with a great second half to beat LSU last week. But they finally went and had a hostile road game against South Carolina. And they got exposed. So, look, Chris Marler said on our show last Friday, he said, I'm not buying Texas A&M. It's just one of those things where, like, you don't want to discredit A&M. They're still a good football team. I mean, offensive and defensive line, I think they've come light years from where they were 5, 6, 7 years ago. They are way bigger in the trenches now, and they got some big behemoths there. But you also got to live in reality a little bit and say your 2 toughest games, or your 3 toughest games, were all at home. You lost to Notre Dame, beat the crap out of Mizzou, and then had a terrible first half against LSU and a really good second half. So I don't think there's any shame in losing at South Carolina. It's a tough place to play, and so this is the theme of this year in the SEC, right? We've been seeing teams you go play a ranked team or a pretty good team on the road in their house at night. Yeah, more often than not, those teams are pulling off the upsets against good teams. So, A&M, you're not alone there. It's happening to a lot of folks. All right, other losers of the weekend. How about Hugh Freeze? Man, if we if we were already at DEFCON 3 in Auburn, we may now be at DEFCON 2. Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers managed to score only 3 points. 7 points at home on Saturday, and a 17-7 loss to Vanderbilt. Now Auburn drops to 3-6 on the season, 1-5 in the SEC, and Auburn is also now one more loss away from their 4th straight losing season. And I'm sure you've seen all the graphics. Through 22 games as Auburn head coach, Hugh Freeze is 9-13 overall. He is 4-10 in SEC games, and he's 0-2 versus Diego Pavia at Auburn. 0-3 versus Pavia, if you include his loss when he was coaching at Liberty. And the comparison in record to former coach Brian Harsin went 9-12 at Auburn before being fired. Hugh Freeze is now 9-13 and seemingly going nowhere. With the loss, Auburn is guaranteed to have at least 5 SEC losses in 4 consecutive years. The last time that happened at Auburn, you got to go back to the 1920s. And with the loss on Saturday, Freeze has now 5 seasons with at least 5 losses in SEC play. His one saving grace, he currently holds the 5th best recruiting class in the country for 2025. But do Auburn fans trust him enough to do anything with that talent? And that's kind of been the theme. It's like, okay, we'll wait for those kids, but like, what are you going to do with it? Are you the guy to take all this talent and win with it? Look, the Peyton Thorne thing has been a debacle. I mean, he should have, when Diego Pavia's called him out after the game saying, hey, you should have come and got me. Yeah. In retrospect, if you can get in the DeLorean and go back a year, yeah, Hugh Freeze probably calling Diego Pavia and Jerry Kill and Tim Beck and say, hey, I know you guys just beat us. You're at New Mexico State. Can you all kind of come over to Auburn with us and we'll figure out an offense and we'll run it with this Diego Pavia kid? Auburn would be in a much better spot right now. Didn't do that. Ride or die with Peyton Thorne. Not going well. All right, other losers of the weekend. How about Mark Stoops at Kentucky? Give his team a little bit of credit. They were heavy underdogs against Tennessee. They had a ton of injuries. Still went out and battled a game where they actually led 10-7 at halftime. But Tennessee pulled away in the second half, and the Cats went on to lose 28-18. Jack Pilgrim from KSR pointed out that Kentucky has had 4 straight games where they've gotten inside the 5-yard line and did not score a single point. Like, that's just, come on, what are you doing there? What's the red zone offense? How are you struggling that poorly? But Kentucky, they started the season 3-2, and they have now lost 4 in a row, and they sit at 3-6 on the season. They get their bye week. Then they host Murray State, so that should be win number 4. But they would then have to pull off a massive upset of number 5 Texas on the road and then beat number 25 Louisville to get to 6 wins in a bowl game. That's not very likely. And the streak of Kentucky making it to 8 straight bowl games under Stoops seems very unlikely at this point. A lot of questions facing Mark Stoops in the direction of Kentucky now, as he is one of the top 10 highest paid coaches in the country. And he is now 10-12 over his past 2 seasons and counting. Don't know what you do there, but Kentucky fans not happy. Another loser of the weekend. I threw DJ Lagway in here. Look, the freshman standout over at Florida. He left the game on a cart in the second quarter with a hamstring injury on his left leg. And the Gators were leading 10-3. Without him, it got pretty ugly. But in his halftime interview with Holly Rowe, Billy Napier confirmed that Lagway was dealing with a hamstring injury and said it was, quote, a significant one. The walk-on quarterback, Aiden Warner, came in, went 7 of 22 for 66 yards and an interception. But, of course, Lagway had taken over for Graham Mertz, who was lost for the season. Billy Napier said after the game, look, I do think the game went the way we wanted it. We made it ugly at times, but we had our team in position, and we didn't come through. But for Gator fans, if Lagway had stayed healthy in this game, you may have had a chance of the upset. But without him now, excitement for the rest of the season kind of dwindles. You're 4-4 overall, and if you can go 2-2 down the stretch, it's a salvaged year. You get to a bowl game, but next up is a road trip at Texas this Saturday. Then home games against LSU and Ole Miss, and then a road trip to lowly Florida State. See how much good Napier can get out of their third-string quarterback, Aiden Warner. And a little thought still, some people asking, did we see the last of DJ Lagway in a Florida uniform? Maybe he hits the transfer portal, whether Billy Napier is fired or brought back. Gators have to be asking themselves, how do you end up with this walk-on from Yale as your quarterback? Napier has lost 8 scholarship quarterbacks earlier than expected in 3 years. That includes Jalen Kitna, Jack Miller, Max Brown, Jaden Rashada. Oof. Paul Feinbaum saying on Sunday, he said, look, spent the weekend with a lot of Florida fans over the weekend. Just going to give you my impressions. Talking with them, they're ready to move on from Billy Napier. So we'll see what Florida ultimately decides. Another loser of the weekend. He won the game, but it has been a very strange season for Georgia quarterback Carson Beck. He had 3 interceptions again on Saturday, with their offense only able to come up with 2 field goals at halftime. And Carson Beck now has 8 interceptions over his last 3 games, 11 interceptions over his last 5 games. And it's baffling for a guy who opened the season as a Heisman Trophy frontrunner. Beck said he knows he has to reduce the turnovers for Georgia to get where they want to go. He said, in the future, I have to be better. Kirby Smart saying after the game, I don't think it's a matter of decision-making. I think sometimes he presses. It's a big game to him. He was from Jacksonville, so he wanted to win this game. But Beck's 11 interceptions lead the SEC. Garrett Nussmeier is second with 9. Peyton Thorne and Taylon Green each have 7. Now, Beck's 17 touchdowns, that's third most in the SEC. But it was the second consecutive game Carson Beck threw 3 interceptions, and Georgia still won by at least 14 points. Weird stat. All right, another loser of the weekend. How about Sam Pittman at Arkansas? Look, Pittman started the year off on the hot seat, and that conversation kind of settled as they won at Auburn, and then they upset then 4th-ranked Tennessee. Started the year 3-1, then they were 4-2 overall. But after their 63-31 home loss to Ole Miss, Arkansas 5-4 overall. 3-3 in the conference. And yes, they are improved over the past couple seasons, but fans were hoping to take more of a step forward this year with the play of Taylon Green, Bobby Petrino as OC. And that is now back-to-back home losses by a combined score of 97-41 in losses to LSU and Ole Miss. The reality is Arkansas, they should beat Louisiana Tech in a couple weeks. That will get them the 6 wins in bowl eligibility. They do have a bye week before they host top 5 ranked Texas. That'll be an 11 a.m. kickoff. That one will be tough, but it's not impossible to say they can't give the Longhorns a game. Remember, they did beat the Longhorns 40-21 back in 2021 in Fayetteville. That was Sark's first season at Texas. But Arkansas, they finished the year at Mizzou. That seems like the big one for goodwill for Pitman moving forward, right? Let's just say hypothetically, you lose to Texas, you beat Mizzou, or you beat Louisiana Tech and you beat Mizzou, you finish 7-5. You go to a decent bowl game, you recruit well. Arrow could be pointed back upward for Sam Pittman and the Hogs. We shall see. All right, there you have it. Those are our winners and losers from the week, SEC Week 10. Still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. First, this episode presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. And look, you can get ready to tackle your college action, your NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, they give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and college all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That it's over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel. They are an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Check them out today. It's FanDuel. All right, roll along here at Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And just want to pass this on to you. The SEC leads all leagues now with 9 teams having 6 or more wins. Vanderbilt joined the party over the weekend, thanks to that 17-7 win over Auburn. So 9 teams: Georgia, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Texas, LSU, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Missouri, all bowl eligible. Now, South Carolina, Arkansas, and Oklahoma are all 1 win away from bowl eligibility as well. Florida needs 2 more wins to clinch a postseason berth. Only Mississippi State has been mathematically eliminated from bowl eligibility this season. All right, a few other tidbits before we call it a show. Over at South Carolina, they pulled off that big upset over Texas A&M at Williams-Brice Stadium. Well, the SEC has come out, and the No Fun Police have said that they have earned a $250,000 fine from the conference for rushing the field. It's the second time in a calendar year that the school has incurred a fine. In January, the Gamecocks men's basketball team defeated Kentucky 79-62 and rushed the court. The third offense cost the school $500,000. So, yeah, no one wants to pay that. All right, other tidbits going on around the conference. College Game Day has announced on social media they'll be heading to Death Valley for Alabama versus LSU this weekend. It'll be Baton Rouge's first time hosting Game Day since 2019. It's been a while since LSU's had Reese Davis and Kirk Herbstreit and everybody on campus. And look, it'll be a fun one too because it's Nick Saban going back to where his championship run started at LSU. And, of course, it's LSU versus Alabama. So there's going to be a lot of Alabama fans happy to see Nick Saban there. What kind of reception is he going to get from the LSU fans? That'll be really interesting. This is the first time he goes back to Baton Rouge, not the head coach at Alabama, right? So they booed him all the time when he was there with Bama. I think with LSU, well, we'll see. If he picks Bama to win the game, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll still boo him. But if he picks LSU to beat Bama, that first off, that'll be really funny if he does that. We'll see what he does with his official game day pick. One other note here, SEC Nation, they will be in Oxford, or they'll be heading to Oxford for Ole Miss, Georgia. So SEC Nation for Ole Miss, Georgia, College Game Day for LSU, Bama, and that'll be really cool to have both of those shows into SEC spots. And, of course, the SEC, they completed their Week 11 schedule. That is now set. The conference announced 2 final TV designations. Mississippi State at Tennessee is set for 7 Eastern on ESPN, and Oklahoma at Mizzou will play at 7:45 Eastern. That will be the final kickoff of the Week 11 schedule. That'll be on the SEC Network. So game time set there. One more note here. Greg Sankey sent a memo. This was kind of a Friday news dump, but Greg Sankey sent a memo out to SEC ADs about teams needing to stop faking injuries in order to create additional timeouts. And Yahoo's Ross Dellinger put out some of the specifics. A first offense will result in a public reprimand and a $50,000 fine for the school's head coach. A second offense would result in a $100,000 fine. And the third offense, the coach would be suspended for the team's next game. So pretty significant stuff there. Now, a lot of people were saying, hey, this is intended for Lane Kiffin, right? You know, it happened a couple times this year where cameras catch their coaches on the sideline and it's coaches like, go down. And player goes down, fakes like, oh, I got a cramp or I got this. Well, Lane Kiffin asked about it after his game on Saturday, and he said, quote, I'm glad they did it. We're a tempo offense, and it happens to us all the time. It happened last week. It may surprise you, but I was very happy about it. So Lane Kiffin says he's happy. We'll see if he falls victim to telling his players to fake injuries. But for the most part, watching all the SEC games I watched over the weekend, didn't see many instances of it. I know there were a few times Kentucky players had injuries, but it looked, and Tennessee fans booed because they were in big spots, but it looked like most of them were legit. And again, like unless you have video evidence of the coach on the sideline saying go down, which we've seen multiple times this year at different schools, but seems like the coaches are going to be a little bit smarter about it too. Maybe there's a key word you'll yell out, and that means drop down. I don't know, but SEC, at least give them credit. They're trying to police it a little bit better. All right. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Come on back and check us out tomorrow. And hey, for your second listen, you can check out all the other great shows we have on the Locked On SEC Podcast Network, whether it's Luke Robinson with Locked On Bama, John Neighbors, Locked On Razorbacks. Check out all the other great podcasts we have. Just search your favorite SEC school and the words Locked On, and you will find it wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. You guys have a great Monday. Talk to you guys tomorrow.